If you're finding that it's getting even harder to keep your adult students engaged in the classroom, you're not alone. More than 50% of nurse educator colleagues that we support here at Dr. Sellars Educate have shared with us that they struggle. All right, so these are two steps we want you to consider when you're thinking about what teaching strategies you're going to bring into your classroom. First and foremost, the cell phone is your friend. Okay, that's what we want to engage our students with. Technology, the simple that we know they like to use anyway. So remember that technology is your friend. You see that I have my cell phone right here in front of me. And this is why, because students are connected to their devices constantly, right? So we want to embrace utilization of technology. And we can do that in a number of ways that we're going to talk about. Second of all, it is with our textbooks. So, yes, we're going to engage students across both, I like to say, dichotomies. So we have the technological dichotomy where students are already plugged in and interested in using them. And then the second part of their journey is going to be textbooks. Now, I know most of us are using electric or digital textbooks or those that are more electronic, which is fine. But for me, I'm a paper type of person, so I like to have my paper textbooks. All right, so now what you want to think about is what strategies am I going to tap into to help my students stay more engaged? So we already talked about the phone, and we're going to go ahead and not only talk about strategies, but we are actually going to utilize some of them. All right, so poll everywhere. I know some of you are familiar with Poll Everywhere. We love Poll Everywhere because it's easy to set up, but I know Slido is another great technology. All right, so this is one example of how you can integrate technology into your classroom where students feel like they are part of the learning journey because they're using technology that they're interested in and they're learning at the same time. All right, so they can use their phone to scan the QR code, and it may be closed by the time this specific poll may be closed by the time you get to it because you can only leave one poll open at a time. But I encourage you to go to polleverywhere.com. It's just a great tool to use. It's free up to about 35 participants. And what you'll see is once they scan the actual QR code, then the image comes up on their phone and they're able to choose from the options that we've given them. So you can see this question, which is our thought-provoking question, ironically. What percentage of information is retained from a lecture? So you're going to choose A, 10%, B, 40%, or C, 5%. This is correlating to the content that we're going to cover in this snapshot. All right, so welcome everybody to Dr. Sellars Educate. If this is the first time you are joining us, welcome. If you are returning, we're glad that you're back. We like to engage in a thought-provoking question and go ahead and open up with engagement in the learning journey because that's why you're here, right? You're here to become a better nurse educator, and we want to talk about those strategies, but also demonstrate them. All right, so next we're going to go to our textbook, Billings and Halstead. We're still using the 6th edition because this is the one that was used by the exam writers for the current exam, and this recording is in 2025. All right, so pages 188 is where you're going to focus on in 189 related to the 3 learning domains. So go ahead and put in the chat, what are the 3 learning domains? All right, so if you're watching this live, great, you can put in the comments. If you're watching this as a recording, we want you to put it in the comments too, all right? That way we'll know that you've watched this snapshot. We are engaging with nurse educators and future nurse educators across the country right here on our channel because we are passionate here at Dr. Sellars Educate on the mission to help all nurse educators achieve certification and become a better nurse educator. All right, so the 3 learning domains you've already put in the chat. For our discussion today, we're going to focus on the cognitive learning domain, all right, and specifically Bloom's taxonomy and the levels associated with learning when you look at his model. All right, so now let's go back to our thought-provoking question. We'll see if technology cooperates. Let's see. I think it wants me to stop sharing first. I always say technology is great as long as it works, but when it doesn't work, it sometimes can create a challenge. All right, so stay with us because at the end of our conversation today is where we're going to share the answer to our thought-provoking question. But I want to point out one other important consideration when you're using technology. you can see that there's a lot of different ways to participate. So students could use text messaging feature, or they could simply type in into their search bar into the internet this specific address. So when we're using technology, first and foremost, we want to make sure we're familiar with that technology. And then second of all, we want to think about how are we going to fully engage our students in the experience. All right, so let me go ahead and now transition to another exciting announcement that we want to share. So this is our daily motivation and really for the week that we want you to focus on. All right, so Faith, let me see if I can get it to present the way that I want it to. We like to use Canva. Anybody out there use Canva? Yes, Canva is a wonderful resource. So this is the daily motivation we want you to use for this week or for today. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. This is a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it's a really important one because what we want you to think about this week is what first step are you going to take? When you're on this C&E journey, it can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to. We're here to break down many of the elements that's listed in the blueprint for the C&E exam to help you decrease your anxiety and ultimately increase your confidence and your competence. Okay, so taking that first step is key. We are excited about our new reflection devotional journey because we know there's huge value in self-care. So this book that is right now on pre-order is going to be completely free. The only thing you have to pay for is shipping. All right. So you'll hear more about our reflective journal. It has been a year and a half in the making, but we're excited to announce that it is now complete. So if you just click the link right here in the description, you will put your name on a list. So we'll notify you right away because we have limited copies for our first launch that will be announced soon, but you all are getting a sneak peek behind the scenes because that is our day one devotional. And then we have some reflective thoughts that we want you to consider as you're moving forward on your journey. All right, so now we're going to go back to our presentation as we kind of talk through what your next steps are going to be. All right, so first, you've already written down those 3 learning domains, and now what we're talking about is the what and the why. All right, so first we're going to cover in this snapshot because it never gets old when it comes to our ability to engage with our learners on this journey. It is about the what and the why. So the 3 learning domains specifically we're talking about are going to be psychomotor, affective, and cognitive. All right, so hopefully those were the 3 that you chose. We're going to be focusing on what are those definitions, what are the verbs, and what assignments should we focus on to make sure students are knowledgeable about these concepts. This is the Bloom's taxonomy for the cognitive learning domain. So we want you to go ahead and write and draw your triangle, okay? And then there are levels. You can see here there's 6 levels thanks to this diagram that Vanderbilt University Center for Teaching has published. This is a one-stop shopping kind of diagram, we like to say, because it gives you the definition and it also gives you examples of verbs. Let's go to page 188 in Billings and Halstead. You see figure 10.1 is the cognitive learning domain, and it aligns with what you see on the screen right now related to Bloom's taxonomy. So let's go ahead and go to analyze. Draw connections amongst ideas. So some of those verbs include differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast. Now I want you to write down what would be an assignment that you could develop aligned with analyzing. We know that our students often start at this lowest level of remembering, but they can't stay there, right? We have to scaffold or build on prior learning. That's how students are able to demonstrate sound clinical judgment practices that are consistent in the decisions that they make and lead to safe patient care delivery. All right, so think about what is an example of an assignment that you could give to students, aligning it with the level of analyzing, drawing connections amongst ideas. All right, and if you're still stuck, because at Dr. Sellars Educate, we don't allow you to get stuck, let's go ahead and take a look on page 188 in the 6th edition, and you will see some examples of, and 189, some examples of assignments as well as learning objectives that should be written at various levels to make sure we are engaging students in that deep comprehension of knowledge. All right, so you can see as an example, in preparation for your first community-based clinical experience in a respite center for older adults, read at least 2 evidence-based articles about fall prevention scales designed to assess fall risk in older patients. Discuss the possible meanings of the alterations to respite staff, the older adults, and their families. This learning experience requires the students to become knowledgeable about fall prevention scales for use in older adults, as well as using the knowledge to differentiate the use of the scales, the certain scales associated with fall prevention. All right, and we know that's a huge area of opportunity in our long-term setting. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up our time together by looking at the answer to our thought-provoking question. All right, so if you chose option C, 5%. You are correct. Give yourself a round of applause. Only 5% of information is retained when we only use lecture, and that's not good, right? We certainly want students to retain more information than just 5% whenever we have spent so much time putting content together. Stay tuned for our next snapshot because we're going to go deeper in understanding how that happens. How is it only 5% is retained? And most importantly, what can we do about it? We hope that this snapshot has been helpful. Again, make sure you are printing out your study worksheet every single time you join us. That's listed right here in the description so you can stay focused on your journey and close your knowledge gaps. We look forward to seeing you in our next snapshot. Have a great one, everybody. Take care.